the commander of the B-52 sent to bomb the Soviets. However, Sellers tells Kubrick the demands of playing 4 parts are excessive. Additionally, he fears he cannot master a convincing Texas accent, so he calls on Terry Southern for help.
Terry could do a perfect Texan accent, of course, and so Terry prepared a tape for Peter of some sample dialogue, and so Peter would wear this wild headset and tape recorder thing. You know, you can imagine 1963 technology. He probably had to strap it on. And he's walking around the set listening to Terry's, well, get those bomb doors, if it hair lips everyone on Bear Creek, that kind of thing.
Ultimately, Sellers masters the accent, but more severe problems are looming. While filming the sequence in which Kong sits astride the nuclear bomb, an incontrovertible disaster strikes.
They had the plane suspended, 15 feet in the air. And Sellers was in the cockpit, and he and Kubrick were engaged in one awful row. Sellers got so taken away with the whole thing, he fell out of the cockpit. Now, 15 feet's a fair old drop, and that's when he broke his leg. And that's when he ended up in the wheelchair.
No way would he be able to get up into that cockpit. So then, of course, Stanley had to recast.
You got to shoot. Now, what do? If you're Stanley Kubrick, you go get Slim Pickens.
Stanley said, well, you can't replace Sellers with an actor. You've got to replace him with something like a real human being who's the real thing.
Kubrick had met Pickens on the set of One-Eyed Jacks, which starred Marlon Brando.
As it turned out, Slim Pickens had never left the United States, had to hurry and get his first passport. But he arrived on the set.
Suddenly the door opens in the corner. In comes this big cowboy with his big hat over in the corner. What a lolloping in like this. He just almost straight off his horse.
Somebody said, gosh, look, he's arrived in costume, not realizing that's how he always dressed, with a cowboy hat and a fringe jacket and the Justin cowboy boots, and that he wasn't putting on the character. He talked. That's the way he talked.
Stay on the bomb run, boys. I'm going to get them doors open if it hair lips everybody on Bear Creek.
He was Major Kong off and on the set. He didn't change. He didn't change a thing. You know, his temperament, his language, and his behavior.
The most famous image from Dr. Strangelove, the phallic symbol of Slim Pickens riding the bomb, presumably to a nuclear orgasm, almost did not occur. The sequence was an 11th-hour inspiration of Kubrick's, much to the chagrin of production designer Ken Adam.
It was a brilliant idea, except I hadn't allowed for it. The bomb bay was completed. The bomb bay was enormous, 60 feet long, and suspended from the grid on the big stage at Shepperton. But it didn't have practical bomb doors because we never intended to see. I said, well, when you need it by? And he said, well, I really ought to shoot it in 48 hours, in 2 days. I said, Stanley, even if I work 3 shifts, day and night, to make these bomb doors practical, we'll never do it in that time. And I talked to special effects man, Wally Weavers, about what's a black and white picture. He said, we take a black and white still of the inside of the bomb bay, and I cut out the bomb bay doors. And then Slim Pickens was sitting on the bomb with blue backing. We shot it from a crane and crane back, and then optically reduce the bomb until it exploded into the missile site. And so it was a very simple solution.
The role of General Buck Turgison requires an actor of consummate skill, someone who can hold their own as a strong screen presence alongside the formidable Peter Sellers. George C. Scott had gained international acclaim for his work on stage and screen. Kubrick became convinced he was the man he needed after seeing him in the lead of a Central Park production of The Merchant of Venice. Kubrick is all too aware of Scott's reputation for volatility and devises a strategy to win his respect.
He was involved in barroom brawls. He was tough. He was a Marine. He drank a lot. And Kubrick handled them very well. He put a chess board on the set. He knew Scott fancied himself as a pretty good chess player. Kubrick's a master chess player. He views life as chess.
Watching George C. Scott, who took hours looking at the chessboard and planning his moves, And then Kubrick would walk over and just do his instantly and won almost every time.
And he demolished Scott. Now, if somebody thinks of themselves as a good chess player and they're whipped, they have enormous respect for the other guy. That's one of the ways that he got Scott's respect immediately.
Scott is indeed brilliant, playing against type in one of his first comedic roles. The character of General Turgison, who urges the president to capitalize on the accidental nuclear strike against the Soviet Union, was loosely based on General Curtis LeMay, a controversial figure whose anti-communist views were considered by some to be fanatical. Scott portrays Turgison as a somewhat juvenile character who pouts when scolded by the president.
I am becoming less and less interested in your estimates of what is possible and impossible.
He also has a schoolboy's viewpoint of sex, which finds him interrupting a meeting with the president to take a call from his mistress.
Well, look, baby, I can't talk to you now, but my president needs me. Listen, you go back to sleep, and Bucky will be back there just as soon as he can.
He's the ultimate optimist who sees the silver lining even in the scenario of a nuclear war.
Mr. President, I'm not saying we wouldn't get our hair mussed, but I do say no more than 10 to 20 million killed, tops, depending on the breaks.
He had a very, very long speech, and Stanley said, right, we're going to do it in master, and then, you know, close-ups. He said to George, go as far as you can. So George Scott started the speech, and he went on and went on. And he was literally word perfect. It was quite incredible, so much so that when we finally cut, the whole stage erupted. I mean, everybody applauded him. He was quite brilliant.
Yet Scott is at odds with Kubrick, whom he feels is encouraging him to overact wildly.
Kubrick manipulated some of those performances out of George by saying this, okay, George, you give it to me straight or you give it to me simple. Now I want you to go over the top. Give me one where you go over the top. And Kubrick invariably used the ones over the top, and George resented it. He was saying that was not my performance.
Kubrick goes to extreme lengths to secure an inspired cast of supporting actors. For the Mad General Jack D. Ripper, Kubrick succeeds in convincing maverick actor Sterling Hayden to come out of retirement to make his first film in years.
Mandrake, I suppose it never occurred to you that while we're chatting here so enjoyably, a decision is being made by the President and the Joint Chiefs in the war room at the Pentagon.
Sterling Hayden was brilliant, I thought, and that extraordinary face and that the way he delivered those lines about the precious bodily fluids and his performance with solos.
Buck, should I get it?
Yeah, you have to.
The only female role in the film is offered to Tracy Reed, the stepdaughter of acclaimed director Sir Carol Reed.
Oh, yes, General Turgidson is here, but I'm afraid he can't come to the phone at the moment. Well, this is his secretary, Miss Scott.
I went for the interview, and he was very sweet because he was terribly embarrassed. And he said, well, there is one drawback. You'll have to wear a bikini. So I said, why? And he said, because the part you're playing is somebody who is a floozy, I suppose, and I'm going to need to see your figure. But I'd been prepared for it, so it was fine. And he said the body wasn't too bad, so I could have the job. They wanted to do a sort of pretend Playboy centerfold, and I refused to take my clothes off. I mean, I'd done a bikini, that was quite enough. And so what I did was I lay on the floor and undid the top of the bikini, so it didn't look as if I'd got anything on at the top. And they put a book over my bottom. And my mother was absolutely furious because it was called Foreign Affairs, the book.
For James Earl Jones, who was appearing in The Merchant of Venice with George C. Scott, Kubrick provides the opportunity to make his screen debut.
He had come to see George C. Scott. He knew he wanted to use George as the Air Force general. And I happened to be playing Prince of Morocco. And I think all along he wanted to have the bomber crew made up of all the ethnics, you know, a Jewish guy, a black guy, an Irish guy, Canadian guy, and so on. When I read the script, Zoggy was the only one to question the possibilities that this is a security test, that we were not supposed to bomb Russia.
Major Kong, is it possible this is some kind of loyalty test, you know, give the go code and then recall to see who would actually go?
There was quite an exchange between the bombardier and the captain of the crew about that. And for some reason, Kubrick decided not to have that exchange happen. And one day I got to the set and realized that scene was being cut. I was very disappointed because I thought, well, that's what made my character stand out.
Kubrick assists Canadian actor Shane Rimmer in one of his early film roles.
I found him terrifically